All right, welcome back everyone. And this is the plenary discussion session. And we will limit a little bit because we only have 35 minutes or so to discuss what we have just heard from the breakout session, but also kind of think about how we can move forward as the HCA Asia community. So here we have a few panelists joining us. So maybe I'll do a quick introduction of them because we don't have much time. We have Xuegong Zhang, who's one of the co-organizers of this meeting, and Miguel, Esteban, and Senjuti, Saha, Park, and Shyam, Prabhakar. I just want to mention that all of them have been actively involved in organizing this whole meeting that has been going on for the past 2 days. So thank you to all of them. And we look forward to your inputs and insights about how HCA Asia should move forward. And if you have any questions from the audience, feel free to ask them through the Slido, and we will try to address them if time is permitting. Maybe just to kick off on the discussion of HCA Asia, just thought of maybe more of a practical question that maybe each panelist can share, which is in concrete steps, like how can we leverage future HCA Asia meetings to achieve equitable goals? And later today, you'll hear from Alistair Forrest, who will be hosting our next HCA Asia meeting in Australia in about 1 year's time. And unfortunately, he's not able to speak on our behalf, but I'm kind of forcing the agenda onto him a little bit. But you know, the idea of equity has been mentioned a lot. And that goes along with, you know, not only in scientific, but also representation and participation. So if you could envisage maybe 1 year's time where we're having this meeting, whether hopefully in person, but if it's still going to be virtual, what kind of presentations and representations would you like to see, and what should we do right now to kind of achieve that? So maybe we can take turns and have the panelists just share your thoughts. Maybe Senjuti, since you have just spoke about equity, could you maybe share with us your thoughts?
Sure. Sure. It was, I don't per se have a lot of experience in doing single cell analysis, but I am glad to be part of this. I have a lot of experience of setting up capacity for pathogen surveillance and infectious diseases through genomics. So for me, it was actually really nice to see the growth of work in Asia throughout this conference, and specifically in the last session, the genetic diversity session, we had 3 brilliant speakers from Singapore, Australia, and Thailand who talked about their experiences. Specifically, this one talk that really grabbed my attention was how capacity from scratch was built up in Thailand, and that's an exemplar. And I think that is going to be the case for most countries in Asia. So I think in future meetings, I want to see more talks like that, and more talks where we not necessarily talk about the technology or the science, but really how do we get there? Like, how do you set up a platform, and what can we learn from each other? And I will say what I also said to that speaker, Varadom, is I think it's also important to publish these papers. Partha just published with his group, Equity Group, about lessons learned. As a commentary, I think it's so important as a community of HCA to also publish papers on how do you set up capacity and translate that in different languages to motivate young people that, you know, you don't have to leave your country to do the work. So a lot of our countries face brain drain. So perhaps if we motivate like that, bring communities together, I would like to see more of that kind of activism in next meeting. And another little thing that might be of interest is to having some workshops, maybe prolonging this meeting by 1 or 2 days, but setting up some courses or workshops as part of this meeting because people are already together. Those are my thoughts.
Excellent points. And yeah, I share your vision, and hopefully we'll have more examples like Verdun in the next meeting. Maybe I'll move to Miguel Esteban. Do you have any thoughts?
So following, hi everybody, following some of the comments of our colleague, I think this idea of the workshops is very good. So hopefully once this whole thing of the COVID-19 is over, we could have, a country where the main HCI meeting is being held, but we could have like a couple of workshops in other countries, in particular those countries in which this type of infrastructure hasn't been created yet. So that I think it would be the quickest way to transfer this enthusiasm and get to know the researchers in their own local area. And I think this would make a big difference. So that's one thing. And then another comment is I think you guys are doing great with IDA for immune diseases, immunology. So you and Shyam and other colleagues. I think in coming years we may think of launching other type of initiatives of specific Asian diseases, so that we bring more people over and we have an even bigger impact on the whole human cell atlas global.
Great, thank you. And your idea of COVID-19 is excellent. I mean, of course, there have been PCR testings, but there are some groups that are doing single-cell immune profiling of COVID patients, but they just don't know where to start. So that's an excellent point, and just having that workshop to be prepared for these countries would be really excellent. And yeah, I also agree that hopefully there'll be more presentations based on collaborations. So, I mean, we heard excellent presentations all day long, yesterday and today. But hopefully next year we'll see more presentations from IDA, but also new initiatives like pilot projects that involve at least 2 or 3 countries in Asia. That'll be really, really great, in addition to kind of you starting up research, but also collaborative research. Thank you. I'm gonna move to Shyam. I don't know if you have any comments. Yes.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for bringing this up, a very important topic. And I do feel that HCA Asia has made some inroads and made some progress in equity, and essentially it's an equity question that you brought up, Jay. But obviously there's a long way to go. And I have some recollections from the HCA equity meeting in Addis Ababa. And it reminds me of what Partha mentioned just now also, and his learnings. So the idea is, I'm hoping for the next HCA Asia meeting, we'll have more workshop content, and specifically, so training. I think training is very important, but even before that, I think between now and the next time, it's incumbent upon all of us to engage a more diverse audience. I shouldn't say audience, a more diverse group of participants in HCA Asia, so that it's not like 2 months before the conference we email them and say, hey, please register for the meeting. By then it's almost too late. So that if we start the process now, we can have a much more diverse group at the next meeting. And then brings up the next topic Partha mentioned, which is listening. So which is a big important part of that equity. It can't be just us saying this is what you need to do and we'll tell you how to do it. So I think that should be one of our goals in the next 12 months. So engaging more groups, listening to what their priorities are and on what terms they would like to engage with HCA Asia. And then hopefully we learn enough from that we'll be able to design the appropriate sessions in the next annual meeting. And then, of course, having done all that, training will definitely be needed. So I really like the idea of having a 1 or 2 days add-on beyond the HCA Asia meeting, where the main HCA Asia meeting can be discussion groups and science, but then you have at least 1 day add-on for training. And if it's a physical meeting in Australia next year, and that's it really depends on how Al and the other organizers, what the situation is there. Then it'll be even easier once you have people physically there to do the training in person.
Great, thank you, Shyam. I think diversity is a loaded word, and I think not only regional diversity, but also gender diversity. And I think we do need to work more on that front as well. And also age and being able to motivate young scientists, students to participate as well. I think the idea of listening is an also important point, and I think we kind of mentioned this in our breakout report session, but creating a communication portal, websites or mailing lists, and I'm even thinking creating some polls just to hear, where the community is in terms of their interests. Getting requests about, are you looking into neural cells or are you looking into skeletal muscle cells? So there are questions being raised with interested topics. So it'll be really good to see, to get a poll of where we are in terms of interest and common ground going forward. We'll try to work on that and get it to the whole community. Xuegong, do you have any comments?
Yes, this is an important question, and I would like to give one minor point here. Actually, Senjuti already mentioned about the language. I think language is one big barrier if we really mean to reach equity. And I watched many of the HCA events are actually not that friendly to non-English speakers. Of course, English is the language of science and technology, and we all do science in English. However, there is a significant difference in the efficiency of getting information from English language, especially from these meetings. So a suggestion should, for me, is that probably for the HCA community, because we actually meet the face the challenge more than the European community. Probably we need get more things into written. For example, of course that's challenging, but if we really jointly publish something, not only talking about that, try to publish something, although it's still in English, but it's people can have time to digest that. I mean, about the policy, about the kind of rules, how we can collaborate, things like that. We can try to find platforms like some journals published in Asia, for example, in China, Singapore, in Japan, we have our own journals. We can publish some opinion or a position paper that kind of gives more voice from the Asian Pacific side. And also for the next year's host, I would give the reminder, of course, Australia is an English-speaking country, but if we are able, we want to attract, get more people from many countries in this area, especially those countries that are less represented in previous meetings. Probably the organizer should design the format in a way that are more friendly to the to whom the English is a second language. And I hope we can have the meeting physically, but in case that it had to be virtually again, we need to take some consideration on that point.
Thank you, Xuegong, and they're excellent points. And just as a reminder, last month when they had the HCA Latin America meeting virtually, they had simultaneous translations in Spanish and Portuguese. So it was probably easier because Latin America share a common language. I think Asia, I don't even know how many dialects there are. but it's something, of course, a little bit more challenging. But I completely agree that even the videos that we're going to share in YouTube or what's the Chinese website for?
Bilibili.
Bilibili, yes. So we really made an effort to share that to Bilibili for Chinese participants. But also having some translations in the video so that when they listen, they can actually read in the native language. So I think we can work very closely with the Equity Working Group, maybe trying to provide the materials, not only the scientific contents, but maybe press release or saying, hey, look, we made an HCA Asia meeting and we are committed to make it more equitable, and making that in a local language and kind of may motivate the funders as well as the community in each country. So yeah, these are something that we would love to see achieve. So I know Goji, you're in this. I don't know if you want to have any comments or you're in this chat group. Hey, Goji.
I think that's gonna be that's not gonna be easy, right? Provide all translation lines. You mean on the video? But there should be a couple of translation companies that can do this. Yeah.
Any thoughts on? So you hosted a very excellent meeting today and yesterday. Any thoughts about what you like to see in the next meeting in Australia?
Right.
I know I kind of threw you in here.
For the yeah, I would like to see, like, I'm more like a scientist. I would like to see like some really hardcore, flashy projects, going on. And leading to some, good scientific discoveries.
Yes, and equally important. Absolutely, yeah. I think balancing that, and I think Senjuti have a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, it was a comment from the previous conversations we were having on language. Goji, that is so important. Absolutely, like scientific projects and having hardcore scientific projects and showing that, yes, we can do it is also so important. And I think when one group shows we can do like this hardcore scientific projects in one country of Asia, then another country joins in, and it has this trickle down effect. I think that's also very motivational. I did want to go back to the language aspect. And I just wanted to say, because we have audience here, that many journals will actually accept, I believe, a supplement of the final translated publication. So we recently published in Lancet paper on language and equity, and that was actually translated in Bangla, and it was published along with that article in Lancet. So I think it's about like deciding, or as a group, that we want to do it, and then just approaching the journal saying, hey, I just want to add it as a supplement. And then once our publication is online, what we usually do is like take the synopsis of it and translate that, and at least disseminate that, even if it is within our institution, so that everybody gets to read it. And we have found that we have done several surveys, and we have found that makes a very big difference and excitement for like the next project.
Great. Yes.
But it would be interesting, though. I mean, say we provide a video, and with 5 or maybe 10 in Asia. 10 kinds of translations in the line. That would be very interesting. And people haven't done that before.
These days with AI, maybe anything's possible.
Oh yeah. That's a very good. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I mean, not simultaneous translations, but maybe recorded ones maybe could be translated, and you can select which language you want to be translated into. But to Goji, to your earlier points, I absolutely agree. Science is important. I guess, in addition, what will be really awesome in this future HCA Asia meeting is groups like your lab and other very leading scientists in Asia to work with many up and coming labs to work together on big projects. That would be and push the science to the next level. That'll be something that we have the privilege to do, and hopefully we can share that with many up and coming researchers. But yeah, I agree. It's a balance of how far we can push this, and so yeah, we do need to take all of these factors into consideration going forward. But definitely share your insight. Any other thoughts on this before on to the other set of questions?
So about the format of the conference in the next year, of course, we do hope we do the physical conference, but just in case we still have to make it online, I would share what we experienced in the last week for another Asia Pacific meeting on bioconductor. So the participants of that meeting was from East Asia, Australia, and the US. And we decided to make the originally 2-day program into a 4 half-day program, so to satisfy the time zone. So that's each morning in Asia and each evening in the US. So we have a half-day conference. I think that's an option rather than a full-day program.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. And actually in Slido, one of the attendees, Jing said that it may be better to even combine both in-person and virtual meetings, considering both effectiveness and broad influence. And I think that's an excellent point. So yeah, if we are able to have in-person meetings, we can maybe in parallel have virtual meetings so that you can have greater participation, especially if it's really hard for you to travel. So yeah, excellent point. Maybe in the remaining minutes, so we talked about Asians funders are becoming a little bit focusing more on translation rather than building references, and I think these are of course big importance of tapping into translational research. So there are kind of 2 aspects into this. So how can we further leverage on that? So there's been some chat about joining with industries even to partner up in acquiring funding. And I think HCA Asia as a group may have a little bit of voice to say we have greater representation of multiple population, and our studies that we generate as a group could be very useful for drug development or drug studies. What are your thoughts and maybe also challenges that can be imposed in tapping into not only governmental funding or philanthropy funding, but also industry funding for HCA Asia? Maybe anyone?
That's true. I mean, yeah, that's very true. One problem in Asia is that most of the funding agencies are limited to only one country. It's very hard to find like joint fundings that can fund, different countries in the Asian area. Is there any or private funding like CCI in Asia? No, right?
Well, I mean, CCI is an international funder, so they do fund research in Asia. Yeah. Right. I mean, other philanthropy groups like Bill Gates Foundation Bill Gates Melinda Foundation have been very much heavily invested in Asia.
Right, right.
But you're
But
right.
I would say a vast majority of Chinese scientists, they apply through government-supported projects.
Correct. And that's the I would say a barrier to equitable and collaboration. So that's kind of why I'm suggesting, of course, in addition to philanthropic foundations, do you think industry could be interested in funding more of a collaborative, multi-country, multinational research? That's
something that we should work through. For sure, there are many drug companies in China that is doing pretty well nowadays. I think India is the same, right? Whether or not these companies will be interested in investing, population genetic analysis of cell atlas in the Asian area, that's really something we should explore. And this will help the companies, make their influence outside of their own country as well. Correct, because the product that is generated will impact. The 60% of the whole population. That's true, and the genetic diversity is. I mean, there's no other continent that can compare with Asia. Senjuti, you wanted to comment on this?
Yeah, I don't know about donors. You already mentioned the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and there is the UK government. NIHR does a lot of funding to also LMIC, specifically in Asia. Something that I think we don't talk about in any field or any meeting that I go to, but we should, is break the silos between these meetings, between the single cell analysis meetings and the pathogen genomics meetings, because a lot of the times the work does overlap, right? If you need clinical samples, someone has set up a really good surveillance to get samples. And then there's one group doing the pathogen sequencing, and then we are talking about, let's say, human cell sequencing. And oftentimes we think of them as different, and we are applying for funding and getting a funding to do that entire surveillance, collect clinical sample, and then do single cell analysis. But perhaps we can talk to other groups and see how we can leverage each of our ongoing surveillances, ongoing studies, ongoing genomics, and share cost and move forward. So we don't replicate, we don't waste resources, at the same time have better chance of success. And there are groups like, Melinda Gates Foundation will oftentimes give more money to infectious diseases, let's say, a lot of money towards vaccine preventable diseases. Can we leverage that funding? So perhaps those are conversations we can also have.
Excellent point, and you're right. And I think that could even be our goal for our next year's meeting is, broaden our expertise and invite these clinicians or different biological domains or clinical domains to engage with us so that we can tap into their resources and expertise and then reach out to foundations as well. So any other comments on this?
Jay, I have a comment on this. I do believe that if we can line up cohorts in multiple countries in Asia that's really diverse, I almost feel like that's the bigger challenge. And if we do that and we approach a company that has products or wants to develop products for that disease, I think we'll get some interest. But it brings up another existential question, really, for HCA Asia, because HCA Global is healthy samples primarily. And so, I'm just thinking aloud, and Jay, you're on the organizing committee of HCA. So how much latitude do we have in HCA to do disease samples? Well, what is the status if we do an HCA Asia project on some disease?
Yeah, and I think you saw from Abhi's presentation yesterday that the importance of disease has been much more prevalent because of the existence of healthy data set. And so, but just healthy data set alone is not going to be solving any problems. So I think it has to be in parallel. And of course, I cannot speak for everyone, but we need to draw that balance as well, that disease will always be the main funding sources for most of us, even possibly even in the US and Europe as well. Lifetime Consortium, for example, in the EU is focusing on disease. So there are, and Lifetime is working together with HCA. So I think we do need some reference data set for Asian population, because again, that's going to be the basis for a lot of our comparative studies. So we do need to figure out how to build that, but at the same time, in the end, all of that is going to be useful for disease, right? I think just disease alone in Asian population may not be powerful, because what is a reference? The reference is still going to be from the US and the Europe, and are we comparing apples and oranges? I don't know. So maybe there are kind of crazy ways to solve this. Whether there's a bioinformatics way or to AI to build or infer an Asian healthy reference based on disease samples, or from combination of disease samples and US healthier tissues. I don't know.
I think if it's studying a disease, obviously we need a control, either longitudinal in the same patient or patient versus healthy. So that's okay. I mean, that study, most of the studies will have some controls, right? But does the disease sample belong in HCA, or is it that only the control sample will be our HCA contribution and the disease thing will be a non-HCA thing? Like, how does it work? Maybe down the road in HCA you can have disease samples also?
Well, I guess in the end, the question is what's going to be in the DCP. And, I don't know if Tim Tickle is still here, but my understanding is there will be opportunities to also upload disease samples in DCP. So yeah, I don't think there'll be a limitation. And I also asked the question to Jonah this morning, will CZI also fund disease samples in the future? And they just started to fund infectious disease and inflammation. So hopefully they'll increase the bandwidth to increase other disease types. But again, I think question will always come to what is the right reference data set for Asian population. So yeah, we do need to continue working on that in parallel.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was great to hear that there is a roadmap for disease in HCA as well. Otherwise, we're talking in opposite directions, right? If HCA is saying, let's do this disease, HCA Asia is saying, let's do this disease, this disease, this disease, and HCA is saying it's all healthy, then that's a mismatch.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I cannot speak for everyone at the moment, but right now, the global HCA, as you can see, the biological networks are heavily focused on healthy tissues. So there's a liver, there's a lung, there's gut, and they're all primarily on healthy tissues. Whether there'll be new biological networks focusing on disease, we don't know yet. So, but we're obviously recognizing it's critically important. Miguel, yes.
So you were just saying that in the global HCA, they have these biological networks and they work really well. Why don't we create some of these biological networks in HCA Asia? We don't have much of that. I think we're lacking some kind of organization that could bring us to, create these cohorts, like Shyam was saying. Once we have those cohorts, I think any pharma company would be so interested in being involved in many ways. So I think we could bring our organization to a higher level by creating these these networks. What do you think?
I absolutely agree with you, and we should do that. So, of course, I kind of try to define that as flagship projects, but we could expand this, of course, to any tissues, whether that's skin, which is a little bit more accessible to lung. So I'd be happy to create such. I wouldn't really use a flagship, but these biological networks, as you said, and to bring people to generate data sets towards that common tissue. I completely agree. Yes.
So yeah, you can call them flagships. It would be the same way, but I think it would be important if we really try to go through the whole human body. So maybe not start everything at once, because this takes a lot of time, a lot of discussion, and then. But I think this would really force us to get people from absolutely everywhere in Asia engaged, and then it would not be so much. Some countries maybe they have less infrastructure, and then for them it's more difficult to start some large-scale sequencing, but they would have some samples whose comparison with other type of samples for a specific tissue would be amazing. So I think this is really something we could, during this whole year before the next HCA Asia, we could start discussing, and then have, like, I don't know, every 4 months some kind of online meeting briefly, just like half a day, and then give some tasks, and then let's see how it goes.
Excellent idea. And I agree. I think we need to follow up more frequently. I think, we cannot meet just once a year. So I guess the overall message is to define what tissues of interest, and try to get people rally around that, because without the coordinators, without leadership, it's also very difficult to bring people together. So obviously I cannot do everything, or Shyam or anyone in this group individually. I think we do need to identify the coordinators and really bring the people with you. So hopefully we can identify what those networks can be, and reach out to those people together. So, and then maybe that group can then present at the next HCA. So, excellent ideas. So I think we are out of time. It's now break time. So thank you, everyone. Thank you all the panelists and attendees. Hopefully it was a productive. I thought it was pretty constructive and productive, and hopefully a lot of these items that we discussed can be realized in next year's meeting. So thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of the evening. And we look forward to Iro Amit's presentation. Okay.